Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we are focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guest is Anissa Hudak. Anissa's life has been intertwined with PTSD, trauma, and the military. As the daughter of a Vietnam veteran and military spouse to an OEF veteran, she saw the struggles others were having, which inspired her to create the trauma healing yoga therapy program. And today we're going to be talking to her about the program and how it can help those who have suffered trauma in their lives. So welcome to the show, Anissa. I'm glad to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. For the listeners who may not know who you are and anything really about you other than the couple sentences I just read off in the intro here, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, as you said, I am a daughter of a non-vet. And at a very early age, I was kind of introduced to PTSD, although I didn't know it at that point in time. And then I got married to a active duty soldier and became very well acquainted with PTSD. We were stationed here at Fort Riley. We live in Manhattan. And I was in the process of taking teacher training for yoga. And the school that I was going through, they were offering a warriors course, which was for active duty retired military for PTSD. And I thought, well, I kind of live here at Fort Riley. We have people coming in and out from deployments. We have this huge military community. We have a WTB here. It would probably be great for me to take these classes and bring this back to my community. However, I was about, halfway through the first day, and I realized that the first person I had to work on was right here. And that my own PTSD had really crawled into the nooks and crannies of my life and was holding me back. And so it really became a journey of, self-discovery, self-healing, along with being able to then turn around and help others. I've had the honor of working for about 3 years at the WTB here at Fort Riley. I have worked privately with soldiers, active duty and retired. And now I primarily focus just with women who've experienced sexual trauma. However, I still work hand in hand with lots of veterans and some active duty from time to time. And so that's kind of how I fell into it. It was never like I woke up one morning and said, ooh, I want to, work with people and make them cry.
Well, and I don't think that's anyone's goal unless you have that really twisted side to you. But it does make sense, especially given the location that you're in a very big military community, that you would want to use this training to help out the people who are coming back from deployments, who are on the tail end of their time in the military, and as they're transitioning out, they probably have some unresolved issues that they need to kind of address before stepping into the civilian world. So it makes sense. The journey and the path that you took to get here to what you're doing now does make a lot of sense. So your program is a yoga therapy program, right? So what is the difference between just yoga, traditional yoga that you might see someone doing in the park or, in a yoga studio or whatever, between that and yoga therapy? Or is there even a difference?
Well, all yoga is healing. However, if you were to look at yoga as a great big pie, and we slice it down the middle, and we have on one side fitness-based yoga, so Ashtanga, Bikram, aerial yoga, co-ed hot naked yoga, all kinds of stuff, right, on this side. And you do that for fun. You do it for fitness-based. On the other side, we have therapy-based. And those of us who are on this side, what we do is we usually choose a specialty. And so there's, yoga for cardiac rehab, cancer, Parkinson's, MS, you name it. I just happen to work with PTSD, trauma, and TBIs. So that's my specialty. And our classes are geared more towards those folks in those niches to really help them meet their needs, as opposed to a fitness-based class. People who are in these types of niches really can't sometimes go into a fitness-based class and be able to execute it maybe to the best that they would want to. And, there's a lot more psychology that goes into the yoga therapy as opposed to a fitness-based. We really want to help people, build them up, self-esteem, self-confidence, along with being able to get a full body workout and maybe better mobility, what else? Better mobility, better balance, things like that.
So how does it work? Is there's science behind this type of therapy where you've tested it out and observed the changes and all that? And what is the process? So, you come to you and we're looking to heal some sort of trauma, whatever it happens to be. And what can we expect? How does that work?
Just so y'all know, right now they are doing, I don't know what outside my window, construction wise. So if you see me wincing, it's because of the noise. It is not because of Scott's questions. So what's the difference? What happens? When you're in a fitness-based class, you're going at a pretty good pace, and you're doing it for that particular reason. So I hate to burst everybody's bubble. This is all science-based. There is no smoke and mirrors. There's no voodoo. It's, not new age, woo, kind of stuff. This is all science-based, and it has actually been proven. And that's what really appealed to me, was when I was in these classes and I was learning all of the science behind it. I was like, well, why isn't more people doing this? Like, this is a no-brainer. There's a lot of physical science behind it, but there's also a lot of psychology behind it. And again, all proven, through science. And it's been really remarkable to see the difference when somebody comes into one of my classes and says, I took a class over at, ABC Yoga Studio, and I didn't feel like this when I walked out. Well, yeah, because you have different needs, and that instructor doesn't have the education behind them to understand what those needs are and to kind of tailor the class for you. Whereas here, things are a little different. So people find that they're able to meet their needs a little bit better when they get the person, the instructor, and they get into the class that really meets their needs.
Right. And so you're right. Those needs are different. A fitness-based yoga is going to be geared more towards people who are looking to get in better shape and, improve their overall, fitness. But this trauma-based therapy is focusing on a different part. It's all, like you said, it's all healing. It's just a different part of your body that you're attempting to heal. And I'm just curious. I know I personally don't do yoga. My wife does, but I've seen a lot of the different poses and all the things that she does with yoga. How is the movements or the things that you're doing in the class different from your maybe more traditional type of yoga for fitness?
Well, so one of the things that we do is, like, I always keep the lights on. Sometimes in a fitness-based class, they might turn the lights off, especially during Shavasana, which is final relaxation. In my class, the lights always remain on. People who've experienced trauma don't usually like dark places, and sometimes if you turn off lights, then you've got shadows, and we just keep the lights on. Sometimes the class can move a little slower. Sometimes we move at a good pace. It really kind of depends on who's in the class, what physical needs I need to meet. But also the way I cue things it's very different. Please join me in this pose. When you're ready, please meet me here. We're going to be moving into this pose now. It's always asking when they're ready to join me there. The reason for that is when you've experienced some sort of traumatic experience, your power, your agency was taken away from you. Here's an opportunity for me to give it back to you, for you to be empowered to make that decision, and for you to move into that pose when you're ready. If you're ready, you might hang out in the last pose. You might meet me in 3 poses, after that, whatever. As long as you're doing the pose safe and you're breathing, it's okay. I talk during the entire class. Some people say that it is the Anissa stand-up hour because I am constantly talking. Now, I'm not a talk therapist, but I am a yoga therapist. And my scope of practice is to help move the trauma out of your body. So that being said, when things get quiet and silent, that's kind of where the scary stuff happens. And so we talk. It's interactive the entire time. We talk a lot about food, sometimes sports, current events, you name it. We just talk. Usually after class, everybody's really hungry because we talk a lot about food. But we're always talking. And towards that end, once we get to Shavasana, final relaxation, generally in a fitness-based class, you're silent, you're on your back, you're kind of in a spread eagle pose, and you're silent for 5 to 10 minutes, maybe more. Not in my class. You are able to lay on your side, lay on your belly, use pillows and blankets and whatever you need to feel comfortable lying down. And then I read. I have several books of yoga poetry. I read about the emotional aspects of essential oils. I will read other poems or quotes or what have you. That way your mind is never alone. You're never alone with your thoughts. And sometimes this happens in, a fitness-based class, but most times it's usually quiet. And so these are some of the ways that classes are different. I would say the number one rule, though, is we do not use straps.
Yeah, and it does make sense that you don't want to be alone with your thoughts. Sometimes you almost need that distraction to keep your mind from wandering into maybe some of those dark places. And by having those things that you're discussing that are not threatening, it could be, like you said, food or things along those lines, current events, although in this day and age sometimes current events could be a little touchy too, but simple things that are not threatening. It's not the type of stuff that people are coming in with trauma about. You're not talking about a combat situation. You're not talking about jogging alone in a park at night and where someone may have been assaulted or whatever. You're not talking about those types of things. You're using that as a way to distract away from that. And that does make sense. And I've experienced that myself in various other forms of therapies that I've used that have required me to have some sort of distraction in place as I was going through some of the motions, because it was just too overwhelming in that process to do it without a distraction. So that does make sense. Now, who is like maybe the ideal candidate for you to work with in terms of who this type of therapy will help the most?
Generally, anybody who has a heartbeat.
Okay.
You need to have a pulse.
Yeah, well, that's probably goes without saying. But as far as like the people who have experienced some sort of trauma, um, what is the best type of person that you're looking for in terms of who this type of therapy will work the best for? Maybe I'm not asking that question the best way, but someone who's been so traumatized that they don't even leave their house, is that this going to be too much, or is this something for someone who is on their way to recovering, and it's kind of that last step to take that edge off, or just starting in their healing journey?
I generally like to work with people who are about 3 to 6 months out from the either experience or kind of realizing that they have had an experience.
Okay.
Generally in the first, 3, sometimes even 6 months, depending on the person and the experience, it's too raw. And, just being able to get up and brush their teeth and take a shower really might be all that they can do. And that's totally okay. Mm-hmm. For those people, I still invite them in and say, just sit with us. Sit with us while we're going through the motions, because we're creating this energy. And so it does get a little woo-woo. We do create this wonderful energy that in the room that they can sit and be a part of. And when they're ready, they can join us on a mat. And that's totally cool because they're there. And sometimes that's like 90% of the battle. Mm-hmm. Just to get them to plug in that way. Doesn't mean that they have to be on a mat. But from what I've been able to notice the past, 6 years that I've been doing this, usually like that 3 to 6 month mark is the sweet spot.
Okay. Well, and that's helpful information too, because someone who may have experienced some sort of trauma last week, they may not want to just jump right into something like this right away. It may be one of those things where they might need to process it on their own for a little bit, or through some other forms of therapy, but before jumping into something like this. So that's helpful, and I think that's kind of what I was going for in terms of who you're looking for, and as far as the energy that you create in the room, I know you said it was kind of a little, woo woo or whatever, but it makes sense because. So I have 3 kids at home, 3 young kids, and we have 2 puppies at home. And when the kids are around the puppies and they're running around and they're getting all crazy and ramped up, the dogs are really crazy and amped up too. And they're running around and they're chasing things and they're playing and everything. And it's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you walk into the room and you sit down on the floor and you're calm and your own energy is calm and everything, it reflects on the dogs. They're not as hyper and jumping around and running and doing everything. They kind of take the lead off of what they're experiencing. No, so it's not 100%. Sometimes they'll still be hyper and energetic, and they're puppies and they should be, but you can see the difference, right? And so the reason why I'm mentioning that is because someone who might just be so overwhelmed with going into a room with other people that they maybe don't even know, it might feel intimidating to them. But if you realize that maybe there's that calming energy going on in this room, that, okay, well, maybe I can handle that. Maybe that's something I can get behind. And like you said, even if it's just sitting there, not actively participating, but just being a part of that might be like a good first step anyways, to just introduce yourself to it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and when I try to have my classes, I try not to teach where people are in rows. I actually prefer a horseshoe because we're creating an environment there, a community, and people can sit within that community, and they don't necessarily have to participate, but they're still a part of that. And nobody is behind one another. So you don't have to worry about, looking behind you. Is this person watching me? Whatever. Everybody's part of the community, but it doesn't mean you have to be actively participating.
Sure. Yeah. And that makes sense too, especially for someone who uh, may have that hypervigilance from maybe PTSD. You don't exactly want someone creeping up behind you, or even an assault victim who, maybe had someone sneak up behind them and assault them in one way or another. You may not want that. So having that horseshoe shape is helpful with that. Is this type of therapy one of those things that it's an ongoing? I'm guessing it's more than just a one and done kind of thing, obviously, but yeah. But like after you start to see the results, is it something that you need to keep up with in order to benefit from, or is this something that once you start feeling the benefits from it, that you can kind of maybe stop going to it as often?
Well, I kind of liken it to chiropractic care. You go and you build yourself up, and the more you go, the better you feel. The more you go, the better you feel. And what happens? Your body finally makes these adjustments on their own, as opposed to having to go in and have somebody manually do that for you. And so your body learns again the proper alignment or what have you. Kind of the same process, you go in, and the more you do it, the better you feel, and your body is going to rewire itself. Really what we're doing is we are rewiring the central nervous system. We're resetting it. And you're going to get to a point when you're like, I'm reset. I am back to homeostasis 90% of the time. You might want to continue the practice because you love the practice and you love being there. However, you might get to a point and you're like, you know what? I feel pretty good. I don't think I want to continue. And that's okay. Then it's done its purpose of resetting your central nervous system for you. And you're a high functioning person with PTSD. There you go.
Sure. And that makes sense, right? The way you explained it, I think that chiropractic adjustment analogy is a good way to think of it. But is this something that people can take some of the things that they have learned during these classes to apply them at home and do the practice on their own, as well as in a classroom kind of setting?
There are certain poses that folks can totally do on their own. Mm-hmm. And that for specific needs, especially, like legs up the wall or waterfall, that is great to help you with sleep. Okay. Doing that for 15 minutes really helps people wind down to the point where they are able to then go to bed. It's a great pose to use. As far as the whole practice, they may not remember the whole practice. And, there's an actual scientific way that I go about it. We warm the whole body up, we do our work, we do our cool down, we do our shavasana. All between that, we're doing our breathing and what have you. The breathing is easy for people to do on their own. Absolutely. And that's where the money is. And yes, there are some poses. Would I recommend that people do this all on their own? Probably not, because if you're not educated in it, you really want to keep yourself safe. So it's a fine line between using poses for a special need or, maybe going ahead and becoming a teacher just so you can keep yourself safe.
Yeah, well, and that's, I think, why I wanted to mention that is because I'm sure there are some things that you do in the class that require some format and structure and the ways that you're doing it to do it in a safe and effective manner, as opposed to just doing it haphazardly, where it may not be quite as safe. So it was sort of a loaded question. I think I kind of knew the answer, but I wanted to just verify and make sure that I had it right on that from that aspect. But it, we've been talking a lot about this class setting, the horseshoe shape and all the energy in the room. Is it possible for someone who maybe isn't comfortable with being in a group like that to do this type of stuff on a one-on-one basis, whether it's over like a Zoom or something like that, or even through some other form of classes that maybe don't require a whole group in the room?
Absolutely. When I say group, I usually mean between 7 to 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually a really good amount of people, because you have people coming in with all different needs. And, you have to kind of know, okay, what the triggers are, what not to do, what this person needs. And so, 7 to 10 people is that's good. I have taught in settings where I've had 25 people or more. It gets a little overwhelming. I've had other people there with me to help keep an eye. Can I do one-on-ones? Have I done one-on-ones? Absolutely. And, the really lovely thing about that is not only you do create that energy, but there's also almost a sense of intimacy. Mm-hmm. And the thing, I'll be talking about my general things that I'm talking about, whereas that person can then say to me, hey, why are we doing this now? Or when I'm doing this, I feel this, or this makes me think of that, or, and then they start talking and they're able to open up a little bit more. And though I'm not a talk therapist, I am a human being and I will listen. Yoga is about releasing. And if it's more about them talking than actually doing poses, they're still releasing. They're still doing yoga, just a different form of it. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And when you have someone who maybe just hasn't had the opportunity or felt comfortable enough to open up and talk about some of their experiences, and then you create this environment where they do feel comfortable with talking about it, I think that's a good thing to have available to people, where maybe you're not sitting in the therapist's office on the couch in that traditional talk therapy type of format, but you're still able to open up, and maybe that will lead you to be able to do other forms of therapy if that's required down the line, right? So I think having that type of environment will help a lot of people to just start opening up and peeling back that onion of all the issues that maybe have been affecting them over the years, right?
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I tell my clients is, if they're in talking about something, I'll say to them, you need to write that down. And when you go see your therapist, you can unbox it with them. Mm-hmm. Don't forget it. So write it down. Getting them to write it down does a couple things. One, it hopefully will help them remember. But also two, they might remember more as they're writing. And that way too, they have something to really take back to the therapist and really process with them. That being said, I think that this form of yoga works best if you do have a therapist, because sometimes you're in a pose and boom, something, just kind of hits you. And that way you have that person to go and really talk to about it. So I think that this works really hand in hand with talk therapy and meds. Meds aren't a bad thing either. Better living through chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a time and a place for all of this stuff, right? There's, medications can be helpful in certain circumstances, and they may be necessary in certain circumstances. So they go hand in hand with all of this stuff. And I think it's one of the things I like to do on this podcast is just talk about different forms of therapies that are available to people, because some people may not have even realized that there is a trauma-focused yoga program out there where maybe that's something that they would want to do. Maybe they do yoga for fitness anyways, and they enjoy that, and they see the benefits of that. But they're also, on the other hand, dealing with some sort of trauma in their life. And, since they're already familiar with yoga and the process that you go through, they might very well benefit very much from something like this, where they go into this classroom or a class setting where they are able to get the benefits of the trauma focus as well. So I like to just raise awareness of all these different types of therapies, and this is one of them that to me, before I came across your name and what you did, it was something that just didn't occur to me that something like this even existed, which is why I want to have people like yourself on the show who can share this information with the listeners. Where can people go, before we wrap up here? I want to make sure that we get a chance to tell people where people can go to get in touch with you and find out more about your program that you offer.
Well, I'm kind of like a bad penny. I just kind of show up on social media all the time. TraumaHealingYoga.com. You go there. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm like a bad penny. I just keep showing up.
So we'll put links to all of that in the show notes so people can reach out to you. But you're specific to your local area, obviously, for the in-person. So you have more.
I do everything online. I do everything online. Yeah. Here in Manhattan, Kansas, we live where the livestock outnumbers the people.
Okay.
And the cows here, the cattle, they're really not into yoga.
Got it. Yeah, I can imagine. They probably aren't quite as flexible as you'd want them to be, right?
No.
So you do all of this online. So that's perfect for people who are in other parts of the country, other parts of the world who might want to get involved with this, and especially for people who may not be quite as comfortable with getting involved in in-person class, where they're physically with a group of people. So that is a great alternative. So we'll have a link to the website where people can find out more information about all of that in the show notes, so they can check you out, reach out to find out more about the program, maybe ask some questions that we didn't cover in this episode. But it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I really do appreciate you taking the time to come on and sharing this practice with us, because I think, again, it's just one of those programs that maybe people just aren't aware of, and we need to raise awareness of all the possibilities that are out there, so that way the people who are suffering can find the thing that works for them.
Well, I think the important thing to remember is there is no silver bullet. It is not just one type of therapy and one and done. Unfortunately, each person is an individual, and your healing process is going to be very individualized. It's not going to look like everybody else's. And so you have to find what works for you. This may or may not work. However, maybe you try martial arts and that works for you. Maybe running is your thing. Whatever it is, maybe, EMDR works for you. Maybe CBT works for you. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you just have to keep trying until you find what specifically works for you. So just don't give up. Keep trying different modalities. And Scott, thank you so much for having me on. I so appreciate being here. Thank you.
I appreciate it too. And I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Drive On Podcast.